Watercolor doesn't have to be complicated to be beautiful. I have 3 easy, beginner-friendly wildflowers here that are fun to learn, they're fun to mix and match, and they're perfect for creating a soft spring floral without stress. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Now, I don't often do a lot of reviews of products on this channel unless I feel like it could be a worthwhile product for you as the viewer. And I recently had the company Arrtx reach out to me with a brand new product that they've just barely released, this fun, cute little set of watercolor paints. I've seen some of their sketchbooks for sale online and they looked really nice, so I thought these might be fun to test out today. In this little set, there are 24 pigments, 11 single pigment colors, and 13 two pigment colors. But something that intrigued me about these paints in particular, though, is the light fastness rating that they have. If you're new to watercolors, that just means that they have a stronger resistance to fading, especially with UV light, which can be a big deal with watercolor paints. But the majority of these paints have at least either 3 or 4 stars, and I think there's even one that has a 5-star rating, which is really amazing. So that is really good as far as light fastness goes. On the back of the box, you can see it shows all of the colors, the color names, the light fastness rating, as well as the transparency of the colors. So let's go ahead and open this up and see how they do. Like I say, these are a really new product. In fact, I'm one of the first people to actually try out and review them. These are available on the Amazon website. I will put a link for that in the description of this video if you're interested in looking into them. I think they sell for about $25 or $26, and I believe right now they are even on sale, so you can get a 15% discount if you get them within the next few days. So that's not too bad of a price. Okay, it looks like inside it also includes another transparent watercolor sheet, again with the information about the paints and the colors. And then, you know what, these paints are actually larger than I expected them to be. They must be a full pan size because they're definitely larger than a half pan, so that's going to help them last a little bit longer. It looks like you can take the pans out of the box if you want to, or you could just leave them in the box and just paint with them right in here. They have the color names actually printed on right under the paints themselves. A lot of times with these kind of things, I have to continually keep my swatch color sheet out there where I can see it so I don't get confused at what colors I'm using. So I actually really like that. All right, now I know you're anxious to get to the flower painting, but before I do that, I am just going to make some really quick color swatches of these paints. Since they're brand new to me, I'm not exactly sure what to expect or what they look like. So let me pull out some water and some watercolor paper and we'll give these a try. Okay, first up, I have the lemon yellow color. This is nice and bright, and it has good transparency to it. Then next up, we have cadmium yellow, Indian yellow, cadmium orange, cadmium red pale, and cadmium red deep. All of these colors that I just listed off are all within that 4-star rating for light fastness. They're very bright and very pretty. As far as first impressions go, it seems like they're activating really well with the water. The color shows up immediately. They're really concentrated, especially coming straight out of the pans. When we get to painting the flowers, I'll mix some together on my tray. We'll see how they handle water or mixing 2 or more colors together. But at the moment, they feel really smooth and really creamy. Okay, moving on, we have crimson, rose, red violet, and violet coming up next. All of these have 3 stars in the light fastness scale. Something else that I really like about this little set is that they've stuck to just 24 colors that are very commonly used. A lot of these are colors that I often paint with. Having a lot of colors can be fun to use, but I don't know that that's really necessary. My palette usually has a limited amount of colors, so I think they have a good color selection here. Okay, now we're getting into some of the blue colors. We have ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, phthalo blue, cerulean blue, and turquoise. I don't think I washed out my brush super well after that violet color because moving on to the ultramarine blue, it looks more like a blue-violet mixture. So I'll try the ultramarine blue once again in just a minute with my brush being rinsed out a little bit better. But as a side note, that did create a really beautiful mix of colors, so I'm excited to see what kind of mixes we can create. Okay, there is a more true ultramarine right there. Moving on, we have phthalo green, sap green, olive green, and yellow ochre. Olive green tends to be one of my favorite go-to green colors, so I'm glad that that one's included in here. Yellow ochre is actually one of the paint colors in here that's rated with a 5-star light fastness grade, so that one's pretty awesome. All right, last up, some of the more neutral colors. We have burnt sienna, raw umber, burnt umber, Payne's gray, and lamp black. And of all of the colors included with this set, lamp black is the only one that is not transparent, which obviously makes sense. This is a really fun assortment of colors. Look how bright they are, and there's a little bit of everything. I think we can make some really pretty color mixes as well. I especially like the reds, the purples, and the blues that are in here. I'm actually going to gear my upcoming painting towards some of those. Now, one other thing that I kind of like to test out with a brand new set of paints is to see what their lifting capabilities are. Some paints tend to stain the paper more, and some paints tend to reactivate or lift off more when they're wet. Now, that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just good to be aware of when you get into different techniques or type of paintings. So really quickly, I just took a little bit of water on my brush and rubbed it on some of the swatches, and then used my paper towel to take off the excess paint or water to see how they would handle this. And for the most part, all of them lifted off pretty well. One of the positives to paints being able to lift off is that when you make a mistake, then you can usually come back in, take some of the color off, or maybe fix or change mistakes if you need to. It also works really well if you're trying to do the bokeh technique or something like that. So this is just something to be aware of. Now, at first, I decided just to play around with some of these colors a little bit, so I pulled out a few separately onto my tray. I took my color swatch chart off and decided just to try out some color mixes and brush strokes just to get a feel for the paints a little bit better. But as I was going, I actually really enjoyed the painting that I was doing and the wildflowers that I was creating. And so although I did this as a really fast, quick, free-handed practice piece, I kind of liked the direction it was headed. So I decided to paint this once again, but a little bit more methodically this time. So I'll show you in a slower way so that you can also enjoy giving some of these easy wildflowers a try as well. These are very simple, they are really pretty, and most importantly, they are really fun to paint. And like I said at the beginning, you can actually mix and match a lot of these together to create a totally different look, or use different colors and create different seasonal type of paintings. There's actually a lot of options here. So here is my sort of rough draft, I guess you could call it, to this painting. Very quick, very free-handed. So I'm just going to set this off to the side and use it sort of as a guide for my next piece the second time around. I've decided to actually draw in some simple pencil lines to kind of gauge where I want the flowers to go this time, so that my composition will be slightly more thought out, but that's not absolutely necessary. This can be totally done free-handed if you'd rather. The first piece was painted on a block pad, but this time I have a separate sheet that's a little bit larger, so I'm going to just tape my watercolor paper down with some artist tape to help keep it still and also help a little bit with the warping, and then we can get started. I'm going to try painting just within the box and see how that goes, but I do have a separate mixing tray here off to the side because I do plan to try mixing out some colors and see how the paints handle that instead of just pulling them straight from the pans. All right, my goal today is to show you a few different types of flowers that you can paint using a couple of different brushes. So with the first flower, I'm actually going to be using a filbert brush. Painting flowers with a filbert has become really enjoyable for me lately. This one's a slightly smaller size, approximately 1/4 inch in width, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out some violet paint and put it on my tray here. Like I said, I want to try mixing these a little bit, and so with this color, I'm just going to add some water to lighten it up and tone it down. Because I'm trying to paint something that's more springtime oriented, I'm going for some more pastel looking colors. So now that I have a little bit of watered down violet color on my tray, I'll take some of that paint in my filbert brush and begin painting on the top part of the flower stalk. We'll start with just some pretty small strokes of the brush first, just by dabbing or gently swiping at the brush. These ones here are just representing little buds, so they don't need to be anything too fancy, literally just sort of teardrop stroke shapes. As we start moving down, we can start getting into some larger flowers. In fact, we're actually going to be using that same sort of stroke, only combining them together and making them a little bit larger or longer to create bigger petals. I'm trying to keep these pretty organic and loose looking, so I don't have them all the same size or even the same shape. They're not even going to be spaced around the center evenly. I'm just creating some petal shapes that meet together in the middle. Because the filbert brush has a nice round end to it, you'll want to start these petal strokes out with the end of the petal and then swipe inwards to make it slightly thinner on the inside, or you can try turning your brush slightly. But you can combine 2 or 3 of these strokes together to make a larger petal shape, and we're just going to keep this loose and simple, not worrying too much about it being perfect. I've started to create a second stalk of these flowers here as well, very similar to the first, and I'll just keep adding onto these stalks of flowers until I feel like they have enough. I hope you're enjoying this tutorial so far. These are just loose and fun and enjoyable and can also be used in many different ways with many different combinations. So I'm excited to continue showing you some of the other flowers that you can try along with these purple ones. I try to put out all different types of paintings on my channel, some like this that are a little more simple and quick and easy, as well as some that are a little more difficult and advanced, so that I have something on here for everyone. So if you find that you are enjoying my painting and teaching style today, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. I really like the look and the shape of these. They really have that wildflower feel to them. They're pretty simple to do, and you could probably paint an entire piece with just this type of flower, and it would look really pretty. I'll have to try that sometime. But I did want to show you different types of wildflowers you could try today, so let's paint another kind. This time we're going to use a round brush. This is a number 3 round, and again, you could try any color that you want. I'm going to pull out a little bit of Indian yellow, which is a slightly darker and richer yellow color. I'll use the Indian yellow as the main base color, but I am going to try adding in a touch of cadmium orange to these flowers as well to create a bit of shadow look. And then we can start to experiment with how these paints blend and mix together a little bit. Now these next flowers are super simple, nothing complicated to them. We are literally just going to be painting blobs and shapes moving down from small to large to create a flower stalk. So I'll start off with the Indian yellow first, and then while that paint is still a little bit wet, I'll take a touch of the cadmium orange and just add a small amount into the yellow and let that blend and spread. I'll paint 2 or 3 of these flower stalks as well, and again you could probably paint an entire bouquet or piece with this type of flower and make it look really pretty, especially if you use different blends or mixes of colors. From what I can see here, the cadmium orange mixed really well into the Indian yellow. It doesn't look muddy or anything like that, so that's a good start. In just a minute we'll try mixing some of the colors on our tray and see how that holds up. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next flower. I'm actually going to be painting these very similar to the violet flowers that we already did, but I want to show you that you can paint a similar type of flower using a round brush instead of a filbert, just in case you don't have a filbert. I also want to test out mixing some colors together on my tray and see if they look muddy or if they blend well. I think I'd like to try maybe some cerulean blue and mix a touch of red violet color in there and see if we can sort of get a blue-violet hue just to change things up a little bit, but also keep it cohesive with the purple that's already on our page. And as a side tip, whenever I'm mixing colors, I do always like to test it out on a scrap piece of paper just so I can see how it's going to look and see what I might need to add or change to the mix so that it's to my liking. As you can see, this is my scrap paper that I was actually practicing some of these flowers on. I think that looks pretty good though, so let's go ahead and give these a try. Just like the purple flowers, I'm going to start off again with some small, simple strokes at the top of the stalk, maybe even smaller than I did with the purple ones, sort of like little flower buds. And then as I move down, we'll get into some of the larger flower shapes. You can paint these petals in using just one stroke of the brush as well, sort of like we did with the filbert, but the difference here is that instead of starting with the end of the rounded part of the petal like the filbert, we'll start with the inside of the petal and then move outward and press down on the brush so that we can make a nice rounded edge at the end. You can see that even though I'm trying to paint these in sort of a similar way with a similar look as the purple flowers, using a different type of brush does change the overall appearance. So if you have one method or way that you think looks better, then feel free to do that. And as far as mixing these paints together, the paint feels smooth, the colors blended together very naturally, they don't look muddy, so that's definitely a positive. And as a side note, just to create a little bit of interest to any of these flowers, it can be fun to turn the flowers into different directions or have them facing in different ways. Some of them might be more front facing, maybe some of them are more side facing. Whatever you choose to do or try will just add some interest to the piece. Okay, let's try painting a third type of wildflower that's different from the yellow and from the purple and blue ones. All of the flowers we have so far are more medium to small size, so let's see if we can paint something that's a little bit larger to help with our composition. So I'm going to also change up the colors with this one. Maybe I'll try some of the rose, and although I love this color just how it is, it's kind of bright for what I want to do with my springtime look, so I'm going to tone it down just a little bit by adding in some red violet and some extra water. That still seems like a really pretty color, it's just not quite so vibrant. So since this is a larger flower, I'm going to be using a larger number 6 round for this one. I'll start off by painting in 2 larger connecting petals that can be on the top of the flower. Now, while those petals are still a little bit wet, let's try something kind of fun and add in a touch of Indian yellow. It's already on our tray, so let's just drop a tiny bit of that yellow color into the center part of these petals. Look how pretty this is. I really like that little addition of the yellow. So let's move on and take some more of the pink paint and paint maybe 3 more loose looking petals more at the bottom of the flower now. And then while this is still wet, let's take a touch of the red violet straight out of the half pan, so it's going to be nice and dark, and then we'll drop a little bit of that concentrated paint into the center of this flower as well. Isn't that pretty? I really love the look of this one. Sometime I might have to do a painting with just this type of flower. But let's go ahead for now and paint another one of these so it's not all by itself. I might even paint in a little bud off to the side as well. I don't exactly have any particular flower types in mind for these, but this one sort of looks like an orchid to me. Okay, very good. Those are actually all of the 3 types of flowers that I was going to be showing you today. I do want to add a couple of more flowers down here off to the side though, just to fill out the composition a little bit better. I think I'll pattern these ones after those purple flowers that we tried at the very beginning. So I'm going to pull out my filbert brush once again, and this time maybe I'll change up the colors and take a touch more red violet and mix it into the blue color that's already on our tray. But this time I'm going to keep it heavier on the red violet rather than the blue. All right, great job. Aren't these just fun and loose and pretty looking, just like a little field of wildflowers? So all that's left to do is just add in some greenery and we can call this painting done. Maybe let's try pulling out some of the olive green. That tends to be a little bit more natural looking when it comes to painting flowers. And we actually could probably just use this olive green straight out of the pan, but because we're playing around and having some fun, maybe I will mix a little bit of burnt umber into this olive green just to change it up and maybe make it slightly darker in value. First off, I'm going to take the number 3 round brush and just paint some really simple strokes in here at the tops of some of these flowers just to finish off that bud look. There's nothing too complicated about this. I'm literally just stamping or pressing the bristles down on the page to create these shapes. I might even add in a few very small leaves here and there as well, using that same type of brush stroke just to help fill in some of the gaps on the page and along the stem lines. Now, because I have pencil lines where I want my stems to be, I know where I can put these, but if you're doing this in more of a free-handed way and you don't have the lines on here yet, it might be a good idea to pull out the rigger or liner brush and then paint in some fine stem lines and then add in these accents after that. Okay, good enough with that. Now, all of my flowers seem to be pretty much dry, so there's one more fun little detail I'd like to add. Maybe let's try painting in a center or a stamen in the open-facing flowers. So I'm going to pull out a little bit of ivory black for this, but this seems a little bit dark and a little bit harsh for how light my pastel painting is. So I'm going to just add a touch of olive green in the mix. Then using a rigger brush, I'm just going to paint some really small thin lines using this color inside some of the open flowers. Okay, good enough. Let's go ahead and paint in the stems of the flowers next. I think I'll use this darker green color that we just mixed up, but it might be a little bit too dark for the stems, so I might add in some more olive green just to lighten that up a little bit more and give it more of a green hue. Then using that rigger brush, I'll go ahead and paint in the stems for all of these flowers, making sure to follow the line all the way through. I might even add a few extra lines in here and there, not necessarily that connect to any flowers or anything. They're kind of like little grasses or something. This just adds some extra detail and fun and helps fill in the extra spaces, but you can be the judge of what your painting needs. Okay, now you could actually leave your painting just as it is if you like how it looks. I'm going to try adding in some larger grasses or leaves into this piece just to change things up a little bit. So I'm going to freshen up this green color on my tray here and pull out a larger number 6 round for these. Then I'll just load my brush and paint these using one stroke, starting with the tip of the brush, and then as I move the stroke out and down, I'll press down on the bristles to make it thicker in the center, and then I'll let up again on the bristles at the end to give it a nice point. This is a really simple way to create some really pretty and easy grass blades or thin leaves. I'm just going to add these in where I feel like they'll look good. The key here is to not go overboard or overdo it. The flowers should be the focus. We don't want to distract from that. So sometimes less is more. All right, I think that is it for this painting today. It was super fun and super simple. I just really enjoyed painting this relaxing, loose wildflower piece with you today. And as far as the paints go, I was actually pretty impressed with them. Overall, they're very easy to use. The colors are bright and show up nicely. The mixing of the colors are clean and pretty, and I really do like the light fastness rating on these paints. It was really fun for me to try out and test out a new product today. So again, I'll leave a link for these little paint sets in the description of this video if you'd like to look into them a little bit more. But I guess that is it for today. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. And I hope you get out there and paint and create and maybe give some of these flowers a try. If you did find that you enjoyed this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.